Yes, so good morning everyone, and welcome once again to this session. And हमने पिछले क्लास में बेसिकली एंग्लिसिस्ट और ओरिएंटलिस्ट के बारे में पढ़ लिया था। ये बेसिकली हमारा सेकंड क्लास है, ठीक है। दिस इज सेकंड लेक्चर ऑफ हिस्ट्री फॉर जीएस। ओके, दिस इज नॉट फॉर ऑप्शनल। ओके, हिस्ट्री जीएस। ओके, तो ओरिएंटलिस्ट फर्स्ट लेक्चर में हम यहाँ तक पढ़ लिए थे कि ओरिएंटलिस्ट और एंग्लिसिस्ट क्या होता है, ठीक है ना। तो ओरिएंटलिस्ट बेसिकली वो लोग थे, वो अंग्रेज थे जिनको इंटरेस्ट था इंडियन कल्चर में। और एंग्लिसिस्ट बेसिकली वो इंडियन थे जिनको, सॉरी नॉट इंडियन, एंग्लिसिस्ट वो ब्रिटिशर्स थे जिनको इंडियन कल्चर को क्रिटिसाइज करते थे, ठीक है। सो बेसिकली अगर आप नोट करना चाहें तो मैं कुछ एग्जांपल बता सकता हूँ। जैसे आपके जो ओरिएंटलिस्ट थे, ओरिएंटलिस्ट के दो एग्जांपल है मेरे पास, ठीक है। ये आपके एग्ज़ाम के लिए इम्पोर्टेंट नहीं है, लेकिन एक मोटा मोटा आइडिया रख सकते हैं, क्योंकि क्या है कि यूपीएससी जो है वो कहीं से भी क्वेश्चन बना लेती है, ठीक है ना। तो सम ऑफ द क्वेश्चंस कैन बी सॉल्व्ड इफ़ यू हैव अ लॉट ऑफ पेरिफेरियल नॉलेज, ठीक है ना। पेरिफेरियल नॉलेज बोले तो साइड का नॉलेज होगा तो कुछ कुछ क्वेश्चन ऐसे भी होते हैं, ठीक है ना। तो बेसिकली ये दो ही लोग नहीं थे, ऐसा मत सोचना कि दो ही लोग थे, ठीक है ना। और भी लोग थे। एंग्लिसिस्ट में प्रोमिनेंट एग्जांपल्स थे तुम्हारे जेम्स मिल एंड मैक्यूले, ठीक है। सो दीज वेर द एग्जांपल्स, एंड इट इज़ दिस फाइट बिटवीन एंग्लिसिस्ट एंड ओरिएंटलिस्ट। बेसिकली जो कॉमन इंडियन मैन था वो भारत के इतिहास को समझने में दिलचस्पी नहीं रखता था। ये तो ये ऐसा कह सकते हैं कि द फाइट बिटवीन एंग्लिसिस्ट एंड ओरिएंटलिस्ट्स, ठीक है ना। एंग्लिसिस्ट्स और ओरिएंटलिस्ट्स के बीच की जो फाइट थी, दैट लेड टू द नीड ऑफ स्टडिंग इंडियन हिस्ट्री, ठीक है ना। इंडियन हिस्ट्री पढ़ने की नीड जो है ये इसी से शुरू हुई। कहते हैं ना कि अंग्रेज़ों के राज का कुछ निगेटिव इम्पैक्ट ही ज़्यादा थे, निगेटिव इम्पैक्ट्स बहुत ज़्यादा थे अंग्रेज़ों के राज के, लेकिन कुछ पॉजिटिव इम्पैक्ट्स अगर मैं गिनाऊँ तो जैसे कुछ गलती से कुछ पॉजिटिव इम्पैक्ट जो हो गया था अंग्रेज़ों का, वो ये था, उसमें से ये एक ये था कि शायद अगर अंग्रेज़ ना आते तो हो सकता है कि इंडिया के कल्चर को समझने की जो ये झगड़ा जो था इंग्लिसिस्ट और ओरिएंटलिस्ट के बीच का, इसी ने तो हाईलाइट किया ना कि इनके बीच का जो झगड़ा था इसी ने हाईलाइट किया कि हमको खुद से इंडियंस को पता चला कि हमने खुद भी स्टडी करना चाहिए इंडियन कल्चर को। सो इंडियंस ऑल्सो स्टार्टेड बिकमिंग हिस्टोरियंस आफ्टर दैट। ओके, so this is the very few positive aspects are there, very few are there, okay, but whatever are there they are okay. So if I say कि अगर 1,000 अगर 10,000 नुकसान हुए होंगे अंग्रेज़ों के आने का, तो करस्पॉन्डिंगली एखादा पॉजिटिव इम्पैक्ट भी हुआ है, ठीक है ना। तो उसमें से ये एक उसको बोल सकते हैं, ठीक है ना। बेसिकली मैं मॉडर्न हिस्ट्री नहीं पढ़ा रहा हूँ, मैं ये जो स्कूल ऑफ थॉट है वो पढ़ाना चाहता हूँ, इसलिए ये मैंने आपको जो है इंट्रोडक्शन इसका दे दिया, ठीक है ना। अब देखिए दोस्तों, हिस्ट्री की स्टडी जो है ना, हिस्ट्री की स्टडी जो है, आपने सुना होगा कि जैसे साइंस के जितने भी सब्जेक्ट होते हैं, ठीक है, साइंस के जो सब्जेक्ट होते हैं, जैसे मैं फिजिक्स ऑप्शनल पढ़ा रहा हूँ, तो मैं ले लेता हूँ फिजिक्स एक ऑप्शन, एक एग्जाम्पल। फिर जैसे केमिस्ट्री ऑप्शनल इज ऑल्सो द थिंग विच आई नो, एंड मैथ्स ऑप्शनल इज ऑल्सो द थिंग विच आई नो, ठीक है। फिर जितने भी साइंस के सब्जेक्ट, नॉट ओनली दीज थ्री, आई एम फेमिलियर विद दीज थ्री, दैट्स व्हाई आई एम राइटिंग दीज थ्री, but there are many more, okay. So you might have heard people saying कि these are basically absolute subjects, okay, absolute subjects. These are absolute subjects. If I say the formula of water is H2O, then every person on the earth will say that the formula for water is H2O only, okay. If I say that the formula of ozone is O3, then the people all around the world will say the same thing, that it is O3, okay. But when it comes to some humanities subjects like history, in humanities subject like history, even some of the humanities subject are also near to absolute, not exactly absolute. For example, if I say geography, geography is such a subject which belongs to the humanities, but it is more or less absolute, okay. It is more or less absolute, almost, not exactly, but almost, okay. But in history, in subjects like history, there is always the fear of, there is always a fear of having a preset mindset, okay. What is this preset mindset all about? This fear of having a preset mindset is the thing that for example, if a western historian is there, okay, if there is a western historian, suppose, then it is a high chance, okay, it is a very high probability, it is a very high probability that he won't respect India's freedom struggle, okay. So this is called as basically preset mindset, okay. This is what is preset mindset means. You are already having some, for example, if I put on, suppose this is my face, okay, these are my eyes, these are my eyes, and suppose if I put a goggle, okay, if I put a goggle which is red in color, then the whole world will appear red to me, okay, the whole world will appear red to me. But is it the fault of the world? The world is absolute, right? World is absolute. Absolute means whatever you see is like that only, okay. Absolute, okay. This is absolute. For example, if I see a mobile phone, if I see a mobile phone, तो फिर वो मोबाइल ही दिखने वाला है कि नहीं? अब वो मोबाइल फोन का कलर अगर ब्लू था, तो इट्स एक्चुअल कलर इज ब्लू, बट बिकॉज आई हैव पुट रेड गॉगल्स, it will appear something else to me. Okay, so this is the fault in history writing basically. According to me, history is also an absolute subject. Why is it an absolute subject? Because if you look at the mobile, it appears blue to you with naked eye. That means the actual color of the mobile is blue, but it is your fault that you are viewing it in red colored goggles. That's why it's appearing something else to you. Okay, so this is the fault in history writing, and this is called as preset mindset. Okay, this is the thing which is called as preset mindset. Okay, ठीक है. Similarly, I have one more example. A person belonging to, okay, Hindutva right wing groups, or okay. So if a person belonging to these groups writes history, okay, won't it be a preset mindset? You only tell me, right? So that is the thing. Okay. So a person belonging to this group will portray Muslim rulers as villains always. Okay. A person belonging to these groups will portray Muslim rulers as villains always. Okay, like a rule. Okay, he will portray Muslim rulers as a villain always. Okay, no matter even if someone is like Akbar, even then he will portray like that only. Okay, and a person belonging to this will always portray these rulers as a hero. Okay, so it is called as preset mindset. Okay, so that's why these type of historians are basically, this is what is communal historiography we call it. Okay, this is what is called as communal historiography. Okay, this is what is called as communal historiography, right? And this communal historiography uh, is the thing which has led to the partition of India also. Okay, this was also one of the factor which led to the partition of India. Okay, though this was not the only factor, but this was also one of the factor. Okay, so this is the thing which led to partition of India. Now uh, we have different schools of thought in history. We have a lot of approaches, and whatever history which we are reading right now, the history which is present in NCRTs today. Is it unbiased or biased? So the thing is, up to 85% we can say. Okay, 85%. Why only 85% unbiased? Why not 100% unbiased? Okay, the reason is that 100% unbiased दुनिया की कोई चीज नहीं होती. Okay, nothing in the world is 100% unbiased. Why not? Because even in the time of Mughals, okay, or any other king for that matter, whatever history was written by the court authors, okay, history used to be written by the court authors. Okay, so we don't have time machine to go back and see whether this happened or not. So we have to unfortunately trust them. Okay, because these court authors might be biased. Okay, okay, they might go for some Chatugari of the king. Chatugari means they might go for some like G Huzuria, okay, like that. So they might go for it. It is a high chance that because they will behave like a Charan Bhat or a eulogist, okay, eulogist, okay, eulogist, okay. So they might behave like that. So that's the chance, but that's why I have written that 85% it is unbiased, because most of the history we have verified from secondary sources. Okay, we have verified from secondary sources. Okay, for example, for example, if a court author, okay, if a court author wrote that the king is very generous, okay, the court author wrote this, okay, then about 85% to 90% of the history present in NCRTs, it has been cross verified. Okay, nothing has been written like that only in the air. Okay, 85% to 90% of the history has been actually verified from secondary sources. Verified for from secondary sources, what does it mean? Verified from secondary sources just means that if the court author has written this, then we will look for archaeological excavations. Okay, we will go for archaeological excavations. And in the archaeological excavation, if we find that there are copper plate inscriptions, okay, we find that there are copper plate inscriptions that this king has donated this land to some particular Brahmin, okay, like that copper plate inscriptions, lot of them. If we find that there are, suppose, 10 lakh such inscriptions, okay, we found in archaeological excavations. What is archaeological excavation? Basically we are studying the earth's layers. Okay, we are basically digging a hole in earth, and we are studying the various layers in the earth. And if we found that this layer is, suppose, this layer shows the year 2001, okay, Then if we go down, suppose here it is 1885, okay, and if we go further down, something we go to the Mughal period, okay, because ये जो लेयर्स होती है ना, ये स्टेटस के रूप में जमी हुई होती है, ओके, these are in the form of stratas, okay, and in the form of stratas, the lower we go in the strata in general, we get to know about the older period, okay. So if we find 10 lakh such copper inscriptions, then this is a secondary source from which we have verified that the core thought, whatever the core author has written, that is correct. Okay, we got to know this. But is it necessary that this will always we will always get secondary sources? Is it necessary? It is not necessary. We will not get them sometimes. Okay, sometimes we might get them, sometimes we might not get them. So I can say that the 10% of the history written in NCRT, this 10% of the history is I can say that it is unverified, right? It hasn't been verified by secondary sources, okay. It is just on the basis of this court author or some folklores, okay, because we have no other option but to trust this source, okay. So 10% of history is like that, and that's the reason why I have written over here that 85% to 90% of it is unbiased, okay. So this is the thing, okay. Now we will move on to the various kind of specs, various kind of goggles, okay, which a person has while writing the history. Various kind of goggles. Someone has blue goggles, someone has red goggles, like that. Okay, so it is an ideological goggle from which the person is viewing the world and the history. Okay, so let us move on towards the various approaches towards history. Okay, approaches towards various approaches are there. The first one is colonial approach, which I have already told. Colonial approach, about this I have already told, that a Western historian writing Indian history will always have that ideological bias that these people are just fools and we are superior. Okay, the concept of whitesman burden and etc. Okay, I have told that. So colonial approach is there, and this approach also says that the British are the one uh, uh, who are responsible for British brought political unity to India. This is their approach. Okay, this is colonial approach. These are some of the characteristic of it. This is the first characteristic. Then the second characteristic of this colonial approach is that Indians are accustomed to despotic. अकॉर्डिंग टू दिस स्कूल ऑफ थॉट, जो भारतीय लोग हैं वो तानाशाही तानाशाही में जिए हैं हमेशा, और दे आर अकस्टम टू इट, मीन्स उनको आदत पड़ चुकी है तानाशाही में जीने की. सो दैट्स वाई वी हैव द लेजिट राइट, ओके, वी हैव द लेजिट राइट टू रूल ओवर इंडिया, because your fellow Indians were already exploiting you. So what's wrong if we exploit you? Okay, there is nothing wrong in we exploiting you or we ruling over you, because already your fellow Indians were uh, ruling you like a dictator. And this is somewhat correct also, but not 100% correct. Okay, we can say that this is 1% true, and this holds even today, because the politicians we see today are somewhat despotic only. Okay, though not like the period of Mughals or some other king, but this is the bias thinking. Okay, they are not saying this situationally, they are not saying this in any situation. Okay, this is not situational statement of theirs. They have this biasness always. Okay, so having this biasness always is very dangerous. Okay, so this history, this colonial approach of history never has any respect for, no respect for freedom struggle. Okay, no respect for freedom struggle. So these are some of the features of this colonial approach. Okay, then after that we have some nationalist approach in the response of this colonial approach. Okay, some of the Indians were offended. Okay, colonial approach offended many Indians, which finally led to Indians getting curious about their past, which finally led to Indians becoming historians. And this finally led to nationalist nationalist approach of history. Right. Okay, so this is the thing which is there. Okay, so now there is one more approach, the nationalist approach के examples कौन है? Which are the examples for nationalist approach? We have some of the examples, like we have many, but I am telling you two only. R.C. Majumdar, R.C. Majumdar and A.L. A.L. Basham. Okay, and A.L. Basham is the one who is the author of the book The Wonder That Was India. Okay, so this is the nationalist approach. Then we have something called as Marxist approach. Okay, Marxist approach. Okay, so the history books which we have today, history books today, history books today are A combination of nationalist and Marxist approach. The history books which we have today, they are somewhat nationalist and somewhat Marxist, because pure Marxist historiography is very different. Okay, the pure Marxist historian, what does it say? Pure Marxist historian even criticizes Gandhiji. It calls them bourgeois. Bourgeois is the term which is used for someone who is elite. Okay, तो मार्क्सिस्ट अप्रोच, अगर प्योर मार्क्सिस्ट अप्रोच फॉलो करते हुए कोई हिस्ट्री लिखे तो वो गांधी जी को, जवाहरलाल नेहरू को, सुभाष चंद्र बोस को भी क्रिटिसाइज करता है। जैसे दत्त जी करते हैं, दत्त नाम के एक हिस्टोरियन है, वो प्योर मार्क्सिस्ट अप्रोच से लिखते हैं। सो ही बेसिकली क्रिटिसाइजेस द लीडर्स ऑल्सो हु वर लीडिंग द फ्रीडम स्ट्रगल. He calls them bourgeois community, and bourgeois means someone who is elite. Okay, and someone who is elite will always want that he will lead the freedom struggle, and common masses should not get the power to lead the freedom struggle ever. Okay, like that he thinks. Okay, so जो common masses है, आम जनता के हाथ में पावर कभी ना जाए, ये सब आप खुद पावर में रहने के लिए फ्रीडम स्ट्रगल में पार्टिसिपेट कर रहे थे। इनको खुद को पावर में रहना था, और ये आम जनता के हाथ में कभी पावर ना जाए, इस बात का इन्होंने बहुत स्मार्टली ध्यान रखा। ऐसा ये मार्क्सिस्ट अप्रोच कहती है। ओके, प्योर मार्क्सिस्ट अप्रोच. So the history books which we have today are a combination of nationalist approach and Marxist approach. Okay, means when it comes to freedom struggle, they follow nationalist approach, and when it comes to the dictatorial kings, they follow Marxist approach. Okay, so such is the thing. Okay, so they are a balanced combination of the two, which is a best combination. Okay, so this is the thing. Then we have something called as subaltern approach. Okay, subaltern approach is also very similar to Marxist approach, only that the haves and have not concept, haves and have not concept is there in the Marxist approach. ठीक है ना? But subaltern approach, this is something which is not socialist. Okay, Marxist means it is biased towards socialism. Okay, but this is a little bit different. It is not biased towards socialism. There are some subtle differences between Marxist historians and subaltern approach, but subaltern approach is also the one which focuses on those sections of the society okay, it focuses on those sections of the society which haven't been focused upon. Okay, तो उन सेक्शंस पे ये फोकस करती है सबाल्टर्न हिस्ट्री, जो जिन पे बिल्कुल फोकस नहीं किया गया है. ठीक है ना? बिकॉज हिस्ट्री राइटिंग हैज ऑलवेज बीन ऑल अबाउट किंग्स. ओके, history writings, what we people have done, it is all about kings, queens. Okay, Not even queens, many times in some of the cases queens means elites. Okay, so subaltern is the one which will focus on untouchables. Okay, subaltern will focus on untouchables, SCs, STs, okay, religious minorities, etc. So subaltern will focus on them. Okay, women also. Okay, so women also are here in this. Okay, so subaltern will focus on these people. Then we have something called as feminist historiography. Okay, what is this? Feminist historiography is nothing but the fact that it is a male dominated society. Okay, they are from the approach that it is male dominated society. It is from the approach that females have never been focused upon while writing history. And this is somewhat true also, but the thing is that they go up to such a level या अतिशयोक्ति हो जाती कभी कभी. It becomes hyperbole sometimes. Okay, it becomes ये अति हो जाती कभी कभी. Okay, मतलब it is okay up to some extent that it is true also up to some extent, because what the court authors did, even at the time of Mughals, the court authors were such that they only focused upon the king, okay, and not the queen. Okay, and even while writing the history of the masses, what were the occupation, they wrote about it. Okay, and occupation was mostly done by males only, right? Right, and very few females were involved in the working community. So even what were the challenges they were facing, uh, uh, what were the problems they were facing, like parda, ghungat, etc. Those problems were never highlighted upon. Okay, so but this feminist historiography, it is like कि झंडा लेके दौड़ती है. ठीक है ना, तो झंडा लेके नहीं दौड़ना है भाई. ठीक है ना, so this is also a kind of history which is rejected. Okay, so क्योंकि ये अति में चले जाते हैं. ओके, मतलब अति में चले जाते हैं, मतलब तुम समझ रहे हो ना. So this is also a rejected kind of, because even they will also criticize. The problem with this history is that they will also criticize. Okay, they will also criticize a woman respecting. Okay, so that it is a completely biased perspective. Okay, so this is the thing. Then we have something called as we have two things called as historian and archaeologist. What is the difference between a historian? Now we have finished all the school of history. There are many schools which have been given in the spectrum, like Cambridge school we have, and etc., paladimka, but those are not at all important from the exam perspective, unless and only until you are studying something called as history optional. Okay, if you are studying history optional na, if you are from history optional, then you have to study even the feminist historiography and etc. You have to study every perspective of history, even the biased perspective you have to study while studying for history optional. Okay, but as far as GS is concerned, we are enough with NCRTs and my lectures. Okay, these are enough. So if you are from history optional, then you have to study everything right from this approach. Okay, this approach also you have to study. Okay, you have to study Marxist approach also, you have to study the communal approach also. All the approaches you have to study while studying for history optional, but from GS perspective that is not the case. Okay, so coming back to our point, what is the difference between a historian and an archaeologist? Okay, what is the difference between an historian and an archaeologist? Okay, difference is that historian, archaeologist will just dig up the land. He will dig up the land and will search for material. Okay, he will dig up the land and will search for material remains. Material remains, like what are the material remains? Like coins. Okay, कॉइन्स हो गए, कॉपर प्लेट्स हो गई, ओके, रॉक्स हो गए, ठीक है ना. ही विल सर्च फॉर दोज थिंग्स एंड ए हिस्टोरियन विल collect data from this. Okay, this archaeologist will tell how much old it is, how much old it is, and etc. specifications. He will go for carbon dating. He will go for something else. कुछ और डेटिंग भी कर सकता है वो. तो वो एज बताएगा, हाउ मच ओल्ड दिस स्पेसिमेन इज, ये स्पेसिमेन कितना पुराना है, कहाँ से निकला है, ये कौन से पीरियड का है, आ, आ, यहाँ पे कौन से प्लेस से ये निकला है, इसमें इसको इसमें कुछ मतलब सपोज इफ यू वी फाइंड अ पॉट. ओके, then whether this pot has some traces of milk. Okay, all these things will be told by the archaeologist. Okay, तो ये पॉट निकला, इसमें मिल्क के ट्रेसेस है, मतलब डेयरी के डेयरी फार्मिंग जानते थे लोग, मतलब the domestication of animals for dairy purposes, like milk and curd and butter, those were known by the people. Okay, so archaeologists will just tell that we have found the remains of curd and milk in this pot. Okay, but a historian will connect the dot and will tell that people were domesticating animals and were drinking milk of cow. Okay, so such is the work of historian. And archaeologists will tell that the coin is of gold, and this gold coin is of very good quality. Then historian will connect the dot that this coin was of very good quality, so that's why the trade was flourishing in this era, right? So such is the work of historian. Okay, so an archaeologist will just tell about the specimen. Archaeologists will just tell about the specimen, but the historian will connect the dots. Okay, okay, now let's move on towards our next point, which is types of sources. Okay, sources of Sources of history. We have basically two kinds of sources, which are archaeological sources, and we also have literary sources. Okay. What are archaeological sources basically? Okay. These are the ones which archaeologists dig up. Okay. जो archaeologists जो dig up करेंगे ना, that is basically archaeological source. Okay. So these are basically based on excavations. And what about literary sources? These are written and oral sources. Written sources and oral sources. What are written sources? The things which have been written by court author, for example, or if you find the diary of some traveler. Okay, those are written sources basically. Okay, so archaeological sources are based on excavations, and these are based on material remains. These are based on material remains. But literary sources are written or oral, and these are, as the name suggests, literary means written. Literally means, लिटरेरी का मतलब क्या होता है भाई? लिटरेरी का मतलब अगर एब्सोल्यूट भाषा में बोलूँ तो रिटन. ओके, सो is it possible that some of the archaeological sources will come under literary sources as well? Yes, it is possible. Okay, for example, if you are digging up somewhere, okay, these are the layers of the earth. These are the layers of the earth, and you were digging somewhere. Okay, you were digging. Suppose at this layer we get a copper plate. We get a copper plate. Okay, and suppose this layer dates back to 1758. Suppose, for example. Okay, and we find a copper plate. For example, I am saying this is a hypothetical example. Okay, and there is something written on that copper plate. Okay, something has been written in this copper plate. Okay, like this it is written. Okay, so the thing which has been written in the copper plate, we come to know that is it is Arabian script. Okay, this is Arabian script, we come to know. Okay, and because why it is Arabian script we come to know, because it is being written from right to left. Okay, it is not being written like Hindi or English. English is being written from left to right. Okay, English is written from left to right, but this is the script which is Arabian script, and it is being written from right to left. Okay, so we come to know this. So isn't this a archaeological source? Yes, it is an archaeological source. Why is it an archaeological source? Because it is found on digging up the hole in the earth, and it is a material remain. Okay, it is a material remain. It is a material remain. That is why it is an archaeological source. Okay, but what about literary? Isn't it a literary source? Because it has been the script in Arabic language में कुछ लिखा हुआ है ना उसमें. Okay, something has been written in Arabic language on it. So it is basically inscribed on this copper plate. So it is also a literary source. Okay, so it is possible that an archaeological source can be a literary source also sometimes. Okay, but not always. If we find a pot over here, we find a pot over here. So nothing has been written over the pot. it is just a material remain. Okay, nothing has been written over the pot, so it is just an archaeological source. Okay, it is not a literary source. समझ में आ रही ना बात? So this is the thing. Okay, what are the basically oral sources of history? If we if I tell you about the oral sources, these are basically nothing but folklores. Okay, oh sorry, folklores and folk tales. What are folklores and folk tales? Folk tales and folklores are nothing but जो हम कहते हैं ना हिंदी में लोकगीत, लोकगीत और लोक कथा। लोकगीत और लोक कथा ही बेसिकली तुम्हारा ओरल सोर्स है, ठीक है ना। लोकगीत का एग्जाम्पल खूब लड़ी मर्दानी, वो तो झांसी वाली रानी थी, ठीक है ना, तो ये तो एक प्रकार का लोकगीत हो गया। व्हाट अबाउट लोक कथा? सो लोक कथा मीन्स दिस इज, गीत मीन्स लोर्स, ओके, लोकगीत मीन्स फोक लोर्स, ओके, एंड फोक टेल्स मीन्स लोक कथा, ओके। सो the things, for example, when the India was partitioned into Pakistan and India, so the era during the partition was lived by some of our elders, okay। so for example आपकी दादी जी है, उन्होंने partition देखा है, okay। if your grandmother saw the partition sometime around 1947, then it is a high probability that some stories of that time she might have told you, okay। so those are basically lok katha or folk tales, okay। so these are the oral sources of history. Now are these oral sources even trustworthy? Are these oral sources of history even trustworthy? So the answer is clearly no. Oral sources of history are not at all trustworthy, okay। oral sources of history, oral sources of history are not at all trustworthy, okay, not at all trustworthy most of the times। समझ में आ रही है बात मेरी? okay, so this is the thing which is there। so hopefully you have enjoyed this session. I would like to end the session here itself, and I will move on to the next class. Next class will also come today only, okay। so till then, good night, शबरात्रि, शब बखैर, थैंक यू वेरी मच, जय हिंद, जय भारत। अपना ख्याल रखें और देखते रहें मेरे चैनल को, और लाइक सब्सक्राइब शेयर कर दीजिएगा, टेलीग्राम ज्वाइन कर लीजिएगा। थैंक यू वेरी मच।